Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. I'm going to be talking to you about all the books that I read in June and July, and there were a lot of them. I think I read about 21 books in those months. So let's get into this so this video doesn't end up being like 2 hours long. We started off with a banger. I first read Dragon Fruit. This is by Makia Lucier. This book was just such a fun, whimsical, magical, great time. It is rooted in Hawaiian folklore. It's about this girl whose name is Hanalei, and she is the daughter of an old island family. She is very close with the queen and the royal family. When she was a little girl, her and the queen were actually poisoned and pretty much put into this coma that caused them to not age. In this world, we have sea dragons, which is just my favorite part of the book. And sea dragons lay these eggs that if you find them and you eat them, they will grant you a wish, but at a high price. So one day her dad finds a dragon egg and feeds it to Hanalei, and she wakes up from this coma. But then her and her father are exiled from the island. It's this crazy thing. And then when she is much older, she ends up coming back to the island, and the whole story is them trying to find another dragon egg to feed to the queen so that she will wake up from this coma. It is very good. I really love this. I think it is highly underrated. It is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I read this 4.5 stars. The next book I read in June was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and sadly I did not really like this one as much as everybody else. This one is about this girl who is a travel nurse with her best friend. She one day reads this, I think it's called like a Reddit something. Anyways, this guy posted online saying like, I have this curse where every time I date someone and we break up, they immediately find their soulmate after. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy because this exact thing happens to me too. So they start talking and they come up with this plan to date each other and then break up, and their curses will be cursed. So they start fake dating. She and her friend decide to move to where he lives to be nurses there just for like a few months, and then they're gonna move away. But then obviously this main girl, I can't remember her name, but her and the main guy, Justin, obviously end up falling for each other, and then a bunch of stuff happens. I just didn't quite get the romance. I didn't see what Justin saw in her because she was so emotionally unavailable, and you could just tell she was not in the relationship. She was not in the headspace for a relationship. She wasn't giving it her all, and he was all in. And so I was like, I just don't quite get this. It's not believable for me. I was also going through like a little bit of a depressive episode, so that definitely hindered my reading experience. But overall, I just gave this a 3-star. Didn't really enjoy it that much. I then finished off a series I was reading, is the Modern Fairy Tale series by Holly Black. So I've read Valiant, and then I read Ironside, and this is just a really good time. It's this fantasy series, and it takes place in the same world as The Cruel Prince, so it takes place in like Elfheim, or maybe it doesn't take place in Elfheim. But anyways, it's in the same universe. I'm having a hard time remembering what these books are about, but they all tied together, and it's just really wonderful. It is a great time. I love Holly Black. I gave Valiant 4 stars. No, I gave Valiant 3.5 stars, and I gave Ironside 4 stars. Next, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This one was, in my eyes, pretty much a perfect romance. It is about this girl who something tragic has happened in her family, and she has to move to her dad's old like vacation home, but she's also going through like a writer's block. So she decides just for the summer she's gonna live in this house and hopefully write a book. She has this neighbor who turns out to be a guy she went to college with, and they're kind of like rivals, and he's also having writer's block. So they come up with this plan to switch genres. He will be writing romance / like women's literary fiction like she normally does, and she will be writing like kind of regular literary fiction like he does, just kind of like darker stuff. And so they end up going on these like outings to help each other write these books, but they're really just like dates. It's so much fun. I loved it a lot. The reason I gave it 4.5 stars. No, 4.75 stars. The reason I didn't rate this any higher was because simply I wanted more. I wanted it to be longer. There's like this part where they are investigating this cult and I wanted more of that. I wanted to go more in depth. It was also just a little bit too spicy for me, but overall I pretty much thought it was perfect. I had such an amazing time with this. I then read Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is book 2 in the Caraval trilogy. The first one follows Scarlet and this one follows her sister, whose name, Donatella. It follows Donatella, the Prince of Hearts, Jax from the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. He shows up in this book and it's just great. It's a really fun time. I rated this 3.75 stars, so I did like the first book better. I liked being in Scarlett's point of view better, but I still had an amazing time with this. I'm really excited to finish up the trilogy. I then read a massive book, which is Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. This is book number 4 in the Boys of Tommen series. It just wraps up the storyline of Joey and Aoife, who have my heart. This series is just phenomenal. I have actually finished the series, but I'll get into that later. But just my favorite romance series of all time, one of my favorite series that I've read in my entire life. It is so wonderful. Definitely not for everybody. I almost would be hesitant to recommend this to anyone just because of the content. It's just really hard to read. But yeah, so phenomenal. I then started a series, and that is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This follows Magnolia and BJ, who just have this very interesting, toxic relationship. It's like they really, really want to be together, but BJ has done something in the past that is hindering them from actually being able to be together. Magnolia feels like she can't trust him, but they act like a couple. They sleep in each other's beds, even though they don't like do anything. They just act like best friends who are always together. They act like a couple, except for they don't touch. It's super, super weird. And I really enjoyed this one. I had a good time. The drama is so much fun. They traveled in this, which I really enjoyed. I think it's a good series so far. I rated this 4 stars. I'm excited to get into Daisy Hates to see if I like that. But yeah, 4-star read for me. Next, I read a book called Theyre Watching You. This is by Chelsea Ichaso. This one's about this girl whose best friend slash roommate ends up going missing. And everybody believes that she just ran away to pursue a career in Hollywood. But she's like, no, she wouldn't do that. Turns out she had joined this like chess club. But the chess club might not be a chess club. It might be a secret society. And so she decides to infiltrate the secret society and it just gets crazy. I thought it was gonna end a certain way and I would have loved that ending, but it ended in a different way. And I was super confused because I was like, I thought we were supposed to feel a certain way about this thing, but then turns out we weren't supposed to feel that way. Anyways, that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, overall, I was like, it's a good read. It was 3.5 stars. I would recommend this one. Then I read Your Utopia by Bora Chung. This was so good. I love this. This is a series of short stories. They are all like sci-fi based. Super fun. Super weird. Some of them are sad. I just think I really do enjoy short stories, especially if they're really weird and they make you feel something in such a short amount of time. I immediately bought her other book, which is called Cursed Bunny. And yeah, I rated this 4.25 stars. I would definitely recommend this if you love short stories and if you love sci-fi. The last book that I read in June was a big, massive letdown. One of my most anticipated reads of the year, and that is Swordcatcher. I honestly hated this book. I honestly did. I don't know if I'm going to continue in the series. But this one is about this guy who is an orphan and he was chosen to be the sword catcher for the prince, which means he is a stand-in and they make him look like the prince. They put this charm on him that makes people think he is the prince. And I thought it was going to be really exciting. Like his life was going to be in danger all the time. It was going to be really adventurous and fun, but it was incredibly slow and boring. I did not care about the entire story. until maybe the last 50 pages. And this is a huge book. I think it's maybe like 700 pages or something. I don't know. But it's a huge book. And I was so incredibly bored, but I was like, I have to finish this book because I do want to know what's going to happen. I did want to know if anything happened in the book, but I almost wish that I DNF'd it because I hated it that much. It was so boring. I can't believe it. I don't know if I'm going to continue in the series, like I said, but maybe I will just to see, but probably not because I don't think I care. So now we are going to get into the books that I read in July. First of all, we have another flop, and that is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. Honestly, throughout the whole book, I was very into it. I was like, this is like riveting. I'm on the edge of my seat. It makes you feel gross. Just because of the content. It's about a teacher and student relationship, and you were not supposed to feel good about it. You were not supposed to like it. She did good on that because I did not like it, and I actually hated that, but it was just like so intense and riveting. And then the epilogue happened, and I literally was like, this is going from a 4-star to a 2-star because the epilogue was just horrible, and it ruined literally the entire story for me. I do wish that I didn't read the epilogue. Like, it just sucked. I hated it so much. It made me feel gross. So I do not recommend this book. But I do recommend my next read, which is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Wow. Wow. Believe the people who tell you that this is a phenomenal book, because it is. How do I explain this? This follows two main characters. One is a girl, she's I think 16, a 16-year-old girl named Vin. Another being a grown man named Kelsier. They are Mistborn, which is basically these people who can ingest different types of metals, and it gives them different powers. It is an incredibly intricate and detailed and fascinating magic system. It took me a long time to read just because it's like so dense. The pages are super thin, but I would recommend maybe the audiobook, but also the audiobook narrator is kind of boring, but it does help to get through the book because it takes a long time to read this. I had an amazing time. It's kind of like, you know, a group of people who are getting together to try to accomplish something. They are trying to form an uprising in this kingdom because there's this guy who's called the Lord Ruler, who they see as like a god. He is ruling over them and he sucks. And so they're trying to make an uprising. There are these people called the Ska that are treated like slaves. They're treated horribly. And I had such a good time with this. I am immediately jumping into the second book. And you have to read this. If you love fantasy, you have to read this. Next, I read actually a children's book. It is called A Whale of the Wild. This is by Roseanne Perry. And this one was so beautiful. Even though it is like a children's book, it is just so deep. It did make me cry. I was like, wow, this is emotional. And it had some content in it that was kind of shocking. Like, the whale at one point was fantasizing about killing a human. And I was like, should kids be reading this? But yes, it is. I think it is kid friendly. It's about this whale, and she is coming of age to become like a wayfinder to lead her family on like journeys in the ocean. And she loses her way, and she is with her brother. They're just trying to find their way back to their family. They're trying to find salmon to survive, to eat. It is very good. I would really recommend this, especially if you've been reading a lot of heavy stuff. This is such a good palate cleanser. Next, I read Taming Seven, the very last book in the Boys of Thomas series so far. The series is not completed, but this is the last book that has come out. This is following Claire and Gibbsy, and I wish it was literally like 200 pages longer, or that we got a second book of them, but sadly this is their only book. Everyone else in the series has gotten 2 books, and I don't know why they only get 1 book, because they are my favorite couple. I love them so much. Gibbsy is just so precious, and Claire is so precious too. They are perfect for each other. This one did have some really hard to read content. I would say this has, to me, this was the most like triggering content. I would definitely check trigger warnings if you're going into this series and if you're going into this book. But it was so beautiful, and I love their romance. They're meant for each other. I love them so much. People didn't like this one as much, and I don't get why. They said it was focused too much on like Lizzie, which I don't agree with. I think she was a big part of the story and it made sense. And it still was like, I don't know, 75% romance. Like, oh my goodness. So beautiful. 5 stars, of course. I rated Mistborn 5 stars. I rated A Will of the Wild 4 stars. And I rated The Teacher 2 stars. I don't know if I told you that before, but I just wanted to reiterate. Next, I read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This one was kind of just a random one for me. This is the time in the month when I just gave up on my TBR. I just scrapped it. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read what I want to read. I wanted to read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And this was 5 stars. Of course, I loved this. This is my second favorite book in the series so far. Number 1 being Goblet of Fire. Number 2 being this bad boy right here. It was so beautiful. I read this at the perfect time. I'm so glad I just decided to scrap everything and read it, because I had just the absolute best time reading this. If you somehow don't know what Harry Potter is about, it is about this boy whose parents were killed by this guy named Voldemort. And turns out Harry is a wizard. So he goes to this wizarding school and Voldemort keeps showing up trying to kill Harry Potter. And yeah, just a bunch of wizard stuff going on. Next, I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This one I wish I read in the fall time, but I didn't, and I'm regretting it because I gave this one 4 stars. Okay, I gave this one 4 stars. I think if I would have read this in the fall, I would have given it like 4.5 stars. I still had a really good time with this. It's just that I was like, this is not the right time. It's like atmospheric, but I am not in the mood for fall in the slightest. I wish summer would go on forever. Fall, please don't come anytime soon. So reading this, I just was like, I am not in the mood. But this one follows this girl named Signa, who death seems to follow her everywhere she goes. Her parents died when she was a baby, and ever since then she's just gone from family to family. All of the people who take her in end up dying, and she can actually see death himself. She can also see spirits, so every time her family dies, she can still see them, see their spirit, and eventually this romance forms, and it is quite good. I really do enjoy it. I just, like I said, it was the wrong time for me to read this. It really was. But yeah, just a really gothic, fun tale. I would recommend this, and I'm definitely going to be reading the second book, Foxglove, in fall. I then read a trilogy. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I loved it. It is the House of Ash and Shadow trilogy. It's actually called the Gilded City, I think. It's called the Gilded City series. So first I read House of Ash and Shadow, then I read House of War and Bone, and then I did not own the third book, so I read it on Kindle Unlimited. This whole series is on Kindle Unlimited, but I only read that one there. And the third book is called House of Light and Ether. This series is by Leah Stone, or Leah, but what was it about? Yes, it's this girl named Fallon Bain who, when she was a little baby, she was just dropped into this town with a sign saying cursed on her, and so no one wanted to pick her up. They were scared if they picked her up they would be cursed too, but then this guy ended up picking her up and taking care of her, and that is so precious. But they are fae, but they are powerless fae. So there is the Gilded City where all the fae with powers live, and then none of the powerless are allowed into the city, but one day her father is like badly wounded, and so she has to go find help in the Gilded City. She finds this guy and she's like, please, I know you have powers, you are a healer, please come heal my dad. So he goes and heals her dad, and then he finds out that he can actually smell power, and he smells that she is the most powerful fae he's ever come into contact with. So she ends up moving to the Gilded City and becoming a part of this fae school. I somehow forgot to say this in the video, but a huge part of this plot is that Fallon can't be touched. Every time someone touches her, even if they touch her hair, she feels basically like lightning is striking her, like just like she's on fire. So that's like a huge plot of this book, and I don't know why I forgot to say that. So I would say if you like Harry Potter and if you like The Summer I Turned Pretty, I know those are two completely different series, but if you like those two series, I would recommend reading these books. It was so good, just a fun time. Like, these are not pieces of literature, like these are not great works of writing, you know, it's just a really fun, easy read. And the third book made me actually sob. I had such a great time with this. So I rated all of these books, or I rated these two 4 stars, and I rated the final book, House of Light and Ether, 4.5 stars. We are finally down to the very last book I read in July, and that is Attack on Titan, volumes 4 through 5. This was so fun. This is about this guy. His name is Eren Yeager. He lives in a world where they live in this city that is bordered by walls because there are these things called Titans, which are huge human-like creatures that they eat people. So one day, like, these Titans break the wall and Eren's father goes missing, and he tells him like the way to defeat the Titans is hidden under our house, and then the house is like buried in rubble and the Titans take over that area, and so they have to flee. Then 5 years later, this is where the story takes place. You still go like back in time every once in a while. You have stories that are in the past, you have stories that are in the present, and yeah, I don't want to give you any more information. It's just that he really wants to kill all the Titans, and his mission is to literally slaughter all of them. It is a really good time. I rated this 4 stars, and I would recommend. It is very much like adult content, like it's gruesome, so I like wouldn't let your kids read this, but if you're like a teenager, I think that's fine. So those are all the books that I read in June and July. Please let me know if you've read any of these books I read, what your thoughts on them were, and just thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.